I'm a pretty good observer of what goes on, but I didn't ever sit down with him or to anybody and talk to him about how do you start a business. But I read a little bit, and I watched how other people ran their businesses and what they did and what they didn't do, and so I'd worked for like 5 or 6 firms, and so I had a way of seeing what I thought was good about the way they treated people, paid people, policies and things that they were doing, and so I had an idea of sort of what I wanted, but not really, and you know, when I got this unanticipated opportunity to start a firm because Don Woodkey, my guy who had been a Wurster, bitched and moaned to the developer of the Golden Gateway, who he was working on the project, that you are a lousy client, he kept saying. You don't know how to respond and give me the stuff, that information that I need and decisions that I need. And they said, okay, smartass, you become the development manager. And so he left architecture and became a development manager of the Golden Gateway. And then he was running that project, and then the Alcoa Building, and that was mostly apartments, all the apartments, but the Alcoa Building, which is now One Winter Town Plaza, came along, and they needed somebody to do the tenant work. They had hired Skidmore to do the building, and they needed somebody to put the tenants in there. And they had hired a real estate broker, a guy named Mike Robbins, and he was going to go and call on the various potential tenants and try to encourage them to build. He needs somebody to go with him and say, I'll show you how you fit in the building and how much space you need to take and what it'll cost you in terms of improvements and how much rent it would be because of the space you take and what floor in the building and all that, because it was all priced by floor, and the higher up, and if you were on the bay side, you paid more than if you were on the city side, and it was a complicated thing. And there were 2 firms in town. There was Sapphire, Lerner, Schindler, a New York firm, had a little branch out here, was doing 44 Montgomery Street. And I'll think of their name in a minute, but I'll come back to it. But another firm that was in town, and they were doing the Hartford Building, I guess it was the competing building at the time. And he said, I can't find anybody that wants to do interiors. Architects don't, architects specify a Barcelona chairs and a Barcelona table and put it in the lobby, and they said, I'm a furniture designer, interior designer. And they didn't, furniture dealers did that. And they, that was done by furniture dealers, and they would come in and design space for you. But they didn't do working drawings or figure the ceiling systems out and all that stuff. Somebody had to do that stuff. And work with the mechanical, coordinating the mechanical and all that. So anyway, he and I were drinking one night, and I said, well, I bet I could start a firm and do that. That didn't sound very hard. And so that's when I went to Bill Wurster and said, what if I can do something? And I got the other firm, the Golden Gateway people, to agree that if I tried it for 3 months and it didn't work, because I was to start up and may not work, and they didn't want to commit, so I got sort of a 3-month deal, and I said, you got to pay me every 2 weeks, because I had $200 in the bank. And so I went to Bill Wurster and I said, Mr. Wurster, I got to keep working partly to keep a little, because I had 3 kids by that time, and we lived in Tiburon, and I don't think we'd bought our house, but maybe we'd bought our first house at $26,000 over there, or $28,000, something, $28,000. And he said, well, of course, you ought to start your firm. You do great. And didn't know me that well, but anyway, he said, for you, do great. And so I would work for him in the morning on finishing up some stuff on BART and some other things, that little stuff that I was doing. And I'd go off in the afternoon to meet with the tenants and draw the things up, and work at night and draw everything up. And so for 3 months I tried that, and they said, okay, you're doing fine. And so I rented space in the back of the office of Henry Hill, the guy who was the guy who came to Cornell as a visiting critic and said I should come to California. And so I rented space, and the landscape architect had been in there, so there were some drawing boards, and it was a little 1-story walk up on Clay Street, across the street from where the Transamerica Pyramid is right now. And I mean, the drafting room had a beaded curtain as a door. I mean, and we had an ammonia tube for making prints, and we swept our own floors and cleaned our own toilets, and we just were just 4 drafting boards in the back, and my wife came in as the secretary, the office manager, and the accountant, and one day a week.